What's up, everybody? As you can see on the screen, it's finally time for us to be talking about DK hero talents in the War Within. Strictly PvP focused, of course, as that's all I know. I will go over all three options for Frost and Unholy. That's Rider, San'layn, and Deathbringer. And what makes it good for a spec, bad for a spec, what could get better over the course of the expansion for a spec, the choice nodes, and what better enhances what we're trying to do in Arena. All that good stuff, maybe an overview at the end of what I will be choosing specifically as the expansion drops. This is for Frost and Unholy only, because we don't know much about how viable Blood will be in a PvP setting, but BG Blitz is way more popular than I thought, and if you find it being useful in other forms of PvP and different brackets, then feel free to give me a comment saying you would like a Blood guide, and I will make one. For all the versions of the videos I have and that will be coming out. And that's everything. So let's dive right into a little short intro this time. Let's talk about Rider of the Apocalypse for both Frost and Unholy, but we'll start with Rider Frost, which is definitely one of the more abstract combinations we have. At the very beginning, this was announced before the DK talents rework happened and the Frost specific talents rework happened. So what we thought was that you would be playing the same all-in one-shot hit-and-run build we've been playing for the last 5 years, but instead of running away with your legs, you would run away with a horse, which was pretty terrible. A lot has changed since then. So now there's actually a version of Rider that kind of seems very sustained, dual-wield oriented, and I'll be saying those words a lot, so get used to it. But let's talk about what I mean. So, of course, right at the beginning, you have sustain because you have these procs that are going to be happening during go, but also off go, that give you strength mods, which is more damage, damage taken mods, which is more damage, and then disease, which does damage. And, of course, you have Mograines casting a silly D&D, which is just going to give you D&D cleave and, spoiler, a little damage mod right here from Mograines Might, which is more damage. So a lot of ways of getting modifiers off go, which when you combine with Enduring Strength and all the other modifiers in the tree that we've been added, gives you a lot of ways to just, and KM procs from dual wield, to just do damage all the time, which is going to be the name of the game for Frost Rider dual wield. So when you go down, you have Mograines Might, which is one of the mods that you're going to be getting 5% haste, 5% damage. And then, of course, you're going to run Cleaving Strikes. If you run Rider, I have one pre-patch build without Cleaving Strikes, but that was just a pre-patch specific thing. It's very easy to drop 2 talents and get Cleaving Strikes, and that way you're always going to be Obliterate Cleaving while you try and get the D&D mods. This is important because even if you're not doing a go, you have Win leaving your Death and Decay, you retain its bonus effects. So anytime there's 2 people to cleave, you will be cleaving them because you're just going to have so many different D&Ds on the ground, which is just crazy to think about, but fine. And also, if you're playing against double melee and they're hitting your caster and you're on top of them, then you'll be cleaving those guys as well all the time, and they'll probably be in D&D. So blah, blah, blah. That's everything there. More sources of cleave, more sources of sustain. Then you have 2 choice nodes here. The one on the right side seems like Pact of the Apocalypse. The damage reduction is just more applicable, but it's actually probably Horseman's Aid, because if you get the proc AMS then against casters, then you're just absorbing their damage or preventing CC. And if you get the proc AMS against melee, then it probably won't break, which means you're going to get Osmosis. If that synergy exists, which I'm almost certain it does, you will be getting Osmosis, which is just increasing your healing, which between your own personal AMS and all the proc AMSs, you could just be having 15% more healing nearly the entire game, which is going to be crazy self-sustain for you and for your healer, keeping you up. So I think that that is better than the other option. Then you have this choice node, which as of right now exactly is not a choice node because the On a Paler Horse does not work in Arena. This has been a huge question mark since we talked about it in the very, very beginning when it was first released. But it looks like that's the case. We'll see if anything changes when the expansion drops, so we can finally know for sure by jumping into the first arena of the new expansion. Very fun, exciting. But yeah, for right now, we're using Death Charge, which is just, it's got a PvP mod on it. It's 80%, not 100%, but it's a sprint for DK. That's a tool we almost never have had access to. We've had Wraithwalk, but it's unactionable, or action cancels it. when you have Wraith Walk, so that's nothing like Death Charge, where you can just be charging at them, doing full rotation. This is actually really good for sustain. It was originally the hit and run talent, but it's actually really good for sustain because when you do a bunch of damage in your go, and then you actually have damage after the go, and they're trying to use mobility to avoid it, and then you stay on top of them, that's going to be very scary for people who also can't peel you because of AMS and Lichborn and IBF and Trinket. So yeah, tough to get a DK off you. Now we have the next row, which is all sustain-oriented. One, you have bigger Undeath, which is bigger dot, and it also spreads, so that's bigger Cleave, which you're also pairing with Cleaving Strikes and all the other cleaving abilities in Frost Toolkit. Then you have Nazgrim's Conquest, which the enemy die part will probably never happen unless it counts pets, which will sometimes happen. But you also have the rune spending generates more value to the strength that you get from Nazgrim, which is further increasing sustain, because if he procs off of a go, you'll still be spending runes because you'll still be in there, just obliterate, frost strike, and getting those KM procs off of go, which means obliterate is extremely useful, which means even more runes will be spent, and just building up strength, which will pair with enduring strength, give you a lot of strength mods outside of pillar, as well as, you know, all your other mods. We've been talking about that. I'm just hammering it home so you understand Rider actually could have merit as a dual wield sustain option. We will see. And then here's one more sustain, because sure, this is really burst heavy as it does more damage during your pillar, but obliterate, shattering Trollbane's chains and doing more damage overall is going to make it even more worthy of a button to press when you don't have pillar active. So wild, yeah. Which is further increased by obliterate doing 10% more damage all the time from Mossworn Menace, and your D&D cooldown being reduced means you're going to have D&D buff perma, like I was talking about earlier, so you're just going to have perma Cleaving Strikes, perma mods, which is wild. Let's go to this one before the choice node. Then you just have yet another perma passive damage buff, diseases, and frost strike. So yeah, you can see how dual wield really loves the option of just always having more damage. That is what I talked about with the Endless Winter build. Hey, I finally get to name drop my own build name. Yes, the Endless Winter build very much loves all of the options for always doing more damage. I'm sure you can see that from how much I've reinforced all the same words over and over. Finally, we have one of the only difficult choice nodes that I've seen personally. This is hard. Feast of Souls and Fury of the Horsemen both have tons of merit, and it's very easy to see why. Feast of Souls is Runic's power spending abilities by 20% more damage while you have 2 horsemen. Now you can force four horsemen with Apocalypse Now, which we'll talk about soon. But otherwise, you would have to get the procs, and then you would have to get exactly 2 procs, and now all of a sudden your Frost Strike does more damage. And it's a good chunk between that and this. That's just 30% more Frost Strike damage. That adds up for sure. And that's very, very valuable with Shattering Blade, which just gives you another modifier on top of that. So Feast of Souls is probably just the burst button, right? You can force 4 horsemen, meaning you can force Feast of Souls. So if you're playing the burst version of the build, the... what did I call that? Somebody in the comments tell me what I called that. It was something strike, right? Storm strike? Strike storm? Strike storm, maybe. If you're playing that burst version, then of course you would grab Feast of Souls. Now, if you want to continue with this Endless Winter concept, which a lot of people have commented that they really enjoy that version, which I'm so excited about because that was my homebrew one. That was the one I didn't see anywhere. Fury of the Horsemen actually works better with Endless Winter because, as you've seen, if you've played Endless Winter, you know extending things is really valuable, not just because you get the buffs for longer, but because there's less downtime between the buffs. That was huge with Pillar, and it's going to be huge with every Horseman that you can extend, and you can extend all 4 of them at the same time with Apocalypse Now. So extending your Horsemen extends all their buffs, extends all of that damage that they can add to your off-go damage, and it is very obvious to see why that would be good for Endless Winter. And finally, you have Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now kind of forces Absolute Zero, which is fine. It is going to force it because of the 50% reduced cooldown, right? That's a huge bonus effect you have tied to Frostworm's Fury. If you're grabbing Frostworm's Fury to get this bonus effect, then of course you're forcing Absolute Zero, because why would you run Frostworm's Fury without Absolute Zero? So the one thing my Endless Winter build didn't have was Absolute Zero. But it does seem like Icebreaker, right-click that twice, Frostworms, click, Absolute Zero, click, is okay. Howling Blast was a huge chunk of the damage, which was really fun, and I was really happy about that. But the triple Runeforge idea by just dropping Shattering Blade is really the core identity of Endless Winter build, where you just always have 18% Razor Ice, always have 6 or 7% Stone Skin, and you always have 18% Fallen Crusader with triple Runeforge and Holy Bond. That was the core idea of the Endless Winter build, and what you lose in Icebreaker damage, you gain everywhere else in this tree, and then you still have access to this huge burst option that extends your burst option because you're playing Apocalypse now with Fury of the Horsemen. So you get all their cooldowns with the Grip Blind Standard, Grip Blind D&D, Absolute Zero, Frostworm's Fury, go. But then, as you're running them out of cooldowns, they're like, oh, finally, it's over. Nope, just kidding, it's actually not, because you're playing the Endless Winter build. So they used everything, and they're like, well, we lived, all we have, they're just going to run away, right? No, you're going to stay on top of them, doing maximum rotational damage with all the crazy mods from this tree. And your 4 horsemen extend past Pillar anyway. So your Pillar's going to drop, and it's going to be like, oh, it's over. No, it's not. There's 4 horsemen out for another 7 seconds, right? As well as any procs that you get after that, and then all of the modifiers. Okay, so now you see, I know I reinforced it a little bit too much. Maybe I a little over detailed, but now you see what I'm getting at. That is all the merit for Frost Rider. You have some burst options with Feast of Souls and Apocalypse Now, and you have a ton of sustain. Okay, so that is Frost Rider. And at the very end of the video, I'll be talking about what I'm going to try first and what I think the other ones need. Okay, so now we have Unholy Rider. So let's just swap over there. This is going to take way less time for 2 reasons. One, we just went over the entire thing. So generally people watch my videos as a whole, even if they're not playing Frost or they're not playing Unholy, they just kind of tune into the other part. But the other reason is because Unholy is just naturally a sustain spec. Like, that is what its identity is. So instead of having to convince you that there is an option for Frost Rider, Unholy Rider just naturally makes sense. It's just pretty funny that the other Unholy option might naturally make even more sense, which we'll talk about in a second. So anyway, Unholy Rider, all the same things, all the same choices, of course, but let's talk, instead of when something says like Obliterate, affects, it does this or that or the other thing, we have Scourge Strike, increases Undeath. We have Scourge Strike, shattering the ice, the chains of ice. We have Scourge Strike, dealing more damage. And we have Death Coil instead of Frost Strike here, which, and this is just Runic's power spending abilities. So for Unholy Rider, I would say you would probably grab, so with Frost you grabbed something else, you had to grab Absolute Zero. With Unholy Rider, I would grab Defile, because you have, once again, that entire crazy D&D package and reduce cooldown on D&D. That means you have effectively perma-defile, so you can just keep dropping it over and over and over, always getting the benefit, always getting the additional damage. On team fights in BG Blitz, a lot of people ask me about BG Blitz. That is crazy. Like, imagine Eye of the Storm, okay? Eye of the Storm, where we all fight on that big flag in the middle. Well, if you put Defiles on there and you have no cooldown on Defile, then you're always cleaving strikes in it. They're always growing to max because of all the people fighting on the flag. And you have all that additional D&D damage, all the mods from D&D, and the cleaving strikes from D&D. So that's just a crazy interaction. So I hovered it over the screen. I know I talk fast, but it's just right there staring you in the face. Defile, Rider, Unholy, Teamfight, BG Blitz. There's all the buzzwords you could possibly need to get some excitement for all of those things. But yeah, so you have this standard, again, 4 horsemen, procced all the time. Unholy loves random procs. You don't need to set things up with your cooldowns don't even matter. You're just always doing damage with Plaguebringer and Eben Fever, and just the rot that Unholy has is only accentuated by Rider of the Apocalypse. You've got an extra disease. You've got a disease mod down here. Of course Unholy loves that. You've got Death Coil damage. You've got the entire Death Coil package. Unholy loves that too. You have Scourge Strike, just a core part of your rotation, just constantly buffing Undeath and spreading it around, and you love spreading dots as Unholy. That's one of your favorite things. You're generating strength to amplify those dots as they come. I already talked about the entire D&D mod. We already talked about the choice node for Death Charge and Paler Horse. It's just Death Charge, and sure, you love to be able to sprint as Unholy because you can stay on top of them and constantly disrupt them. More Scourge Strikes, more Festering Strikes, more disruption. Proc AMS is exactly as good for Unholy as it is for Frost. You're still going to be getting extra healing from Osmosis. You're still going to be getting extra CC protection. It's just very, very good. The Trollbane's Icy Fury is not quite as exciting because Obliterate is a chunky button and Scorch Strike isn't really, but adding damage to something doesn't mean the original base damage of that original ability has to be high, because you're not adding a percentage of Scorch Strike's damage or Obliterate's damage, you're adding a new source of damage. So with the amount you press Scorch Strike, shattering that Chains of Ice for a nice chunk of damage on every Scorch Strike is just another form of damage. And Unholy loves having all these forms of damage. It's very difficult to peel and very difficult to know when to wall, right? How do you know when to wall against Rider Unholy? What do you wall? It's not like they have, you could wall Army of the Dead. Well, that's not really a big source of your cooldown. How about Unholy Assault? Well, yeah, but you're just always doing damage after that as well. Do you wall Apocalypse? You might not even need to run Apocalypse, right? You can't wall Sudden Doom procs because they're all the time, right? Anyway, so Trollbane's Icy Fury is more along those lines. And so is the entire Rider Unholy combination, where you have all these different sources of damage. They can press their defensives here, but you're like, okay, after the defensive, I'll just swap. And now after the defensives ends, I'm still doing damage. And of course, you have the big D&D synergy, which is amazing for cleaving team fights, blah, blah, blah. With Feast of Souls, this is, what's funny is you wouldn't think, but this is exactly as hard to choose as it was for Frost, because Death Coil package is monstrous. So pressing Army of the Dead and just getting access to 20% more Death Coil damage is just awesome, because it does a ton of damage. But Fury of the Horsemen, as I talked about for Frost over and over, it's just so good. Because you have all these mods that you will always be having access to, and now you're just extending them. So you could try to make the same distinction. Feast of Souls is for burst, Fury of the Horsemen is for sustain, but most every Unholy build is sustain focused. So it kind of feels like you would go in that route, but they're both so good that I wouldn't ever look at somebody running Feast of Souls and say, why are you doing that? I would say, I know exactly why you're doing that, because it's good. And then, yeah, you just have passive damage mods and your way of grabbing all four horsemen. Now, this is one of the reasons, now you have to look at this, because people are going to question, right? Frost Rider? That doesn't make any sense. That's an Unholy thing. Frost Rider gets 1.5 minute Apocalypse now, because you have a cooldown reduction on Frostworm's Fury. You don't have that on Army of the Dead. It's baseline 3 minutes instead of getting it down to 1.5, right? So, huge. So Frost Rider has that really wild access to 4 horsemen extendable every 1.5 minutes. And then Unholy just gets value from everything else, because Unholy has freaking Defile in the D&D mod. Yeah, okay. So there you go. Unholy Rider, Frost Rider. That was the big start, the big explosion of information. Now we're going to go with the specific Frost only and Unholy only. And we'll start with Frost Deathbringer. So I talked so much about how much I love Rider, right? It's very possible Deathbringer is just better. It really is. Because it has something that it cannot be denied. It has a huge go enabler by putting your core new ability, Reaper's Mark, accessible exactly when you want it. You don't have to wait for procs. You just press it on the exact same cooldown as the rest of your entire kit, because now Pillar of Frost gets reduced by 15 seconds. What does that make it? 45 seconds, which is also the new cooldown of Strangulate, which is 45 seconds. So absolutely everything ties perfectly in to a 45-second Omega Go, which is what Reaper's Mark is. Reaper's Mark Pillar is just an Omega Go. It hits so extremely hard, and the entire Deathbringer talent line is effectively just making it hit hard and making all of the things that Reaper's Mark do very impactful. So all you need to know about Reaper's Mark is it does a huge chunk of damage, and you want to stack it as fast as possible. And you know what's really great at stacking it? Dual wield, because dual weapons. I mean, I don't need to explain that to you. So you have stacking increase right now from Bind and Darkness, which is a little bit of a crit mod. There's another thing that we have going on, which is you have to find a way to get crit, but we're not going to have as much secondary stats at the beginning of the expansion. Rhyme-empowered Howling Blast, dealing Shadow Frost damage, is cool for exactly Deathbringer. It's not really a thing. The beginning part is more important. It gives you a lot of stacks, and it gives you more reason to go crit, which you're really going to need because it's nerfed by 50% in PvP. But the reason I say that is because you actually need to go crit to access Long Winter anyway. Like, I've tried it a lot, and you need like 12 to 15% crit in order to make sure this is always happening, and you need it to always happen because it is absolutely amazing. So sorry if I lost you for a second, meandering through the idea here. It's the core concept is haste and mastery should be your best stats. Haste absolutely is your best stat, but because of all of the different mechanics that require you to have crit to access them and how insanely good they are, you have to get crit chance, which means you might not even have enough stats left over to get any mastery. But it's okay, because the ability damage itself from Deathbringer is so strong that you might not need to buff it with mastery. You just need to access it with haste and crit. Sorry about that. Very important. I'm thorough. You know me. So yeah, Bind in Darkness stacks Reaper's Mark stack very fast. Okay, cool. Frost Fever doing more damage is fine. It's just a little bit more sustained. Not nearly as useful as if this was in Rider, and it's not, but whatever. You still do some damage outside of goes, and getting cooldowns before your 45-second go comes back up is monstrous because you need cooldowns to deal with a 45-second go. It's terrifying. More crit applicators. You don't really need to go to have any more reasons for crit. This just kind of enforces the fact that, oh yeah, I guess we actually will be running the thing that's nerfed by 50% in PvP. But it's just more damage during it and outside of goes. Nothing more to say about Wave of Souls. They did it in the most bizarre. It's a wave that goes out and comes back in. It's just damage. Who cares? As long as you're facing people, you're doing damage. Great. Then you have the Reaper Mark exploding. The Reaper Mark explosion dealing more damage as an execute effect. These are just, effectively this tree is just grabbing Reaper's Mark, stacking it, and blowing it up, right? So it's just Reaper's Mark damage, Reaper's Mark damage, Reaper's Mark damage. As the expansion goes on and you get more familiar with the ability by just using it, there's no amount of words I can say that will be as useful as just playing Deathbringer Frost. So you can kind of see all of these things and the big numbers they put on your screen and saying, oh, okay, Reaper's Mark, yeah, this is really good. Okay, but everything is just coming together to make sure that the Deathbringer ability hits as hard as possible, which is something it does. Finally, we have a choice node, which is survivability focus because it's Frost/Blood. They nerfed these in PvP, and I think the reason is because they were insane. Specifically, they is a really bad word there. Rune-carved plates is insane. Pact of the Deathbringer is not insane because Death Pact is not insane. In fact, Death Pact is really bad. So you would always run Rune-carved plates, which is just perma magic damage reduction and perma physical damage reduction. So it's just perma damage reduction. You would literally never run Pact of the Deathbringer for any reason whatsoever in PvP. And the way they nerfed it was strictly in PvP. So just a silly miss from Blizzard. I don't know. Good one, I guess. Maybe it's because health pools are so high. Talk in the comments below if you've been on beta a lot and you've had a chance to play around Pact of the Deathbringer. Are health pools high enough? The reason Death Pact is so bad is because it puts a healing absorption on you and dampening stacks really fast. So at some point, a 50% effectiveness Death Pact would do no healing and only harm you, right? So is health pool so high that that's not the case, and then you actually always get healing out of it? I can't imagine a world where that's the case. Rune-carved plates is what you're running. The end. Here are 3 more choice nodes, which is crazy, and I'll talk about all 3 of them. Expelling Shield is strictly caster focused. So every time you see Double Wizard, run Expelling Shield. Otherwise, you can run Death's Messenger for a little bit of extra raised dead damage, but what you're really using it for is short cooldown Lichborn, which gives you a Fear Break, Charm Break, Immune's Polymorph, Immune's Hex, and gives you a 15% wall, which is also extended by 2 seconds because we're always going to run Lichborn wall. So even though Death's Messenger seems really pointless, Lichborn is actually a fantastic button, so reducing it by 30 seconds is great, but the other one is way better for wizards because you're slowing their cast speed. I mean, this is awesome. I mean, I guess Warlock, though, if you want to get out of every fear they have, you already have so many tools to get out of their fear and proc AMS, which is going to immune fears. You could make the argument that Death's Messenger is good against wizards as well, simply because it gives you a wall against wizards. It gives you outs for Poly and Fear, which are both wizard spells. Try both. I might end up being a Death's Messenger only kind of guy now that I think about exactly what I just told myself. So that's why you experiment with stuff. Now you have Dark Talons versus Wither Away. Just a lot of words on your screen. I'm sorry about that. This is Dark Talons is really important, I think, overall for Frost Always, because you are going to be running builds with smothering offense. So even though Wither Away has this weird burst potential, which you can see as it deals its damage in half the duration, so it's just kind of like umping the damage of it, you would never need to apply Frost Fever. Yeah, so I'm going to go with this is a non-choice Dark Talons every time. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. We finally locked something in completely for you. Non-choice Dark Talons every time. Finally, you have Swift End versus Painful Death. My God, look at these names. Reaper's Mark cooldown reduction. Not what you want. You want it to be 45 seconds. Painful Death every single time. That's what you're going to choose. You will be choosing Painful Death every single time. There's never going to be a time where you don't choose Painful Death. Words that I didn't think I'd ever be saying 3 times in a row. Okay, and then you have Exterminate, which is just monster damage. It's the grand finale. It's the, hey, Reaper's Mark is an awesome ability that you're going to press every 45 seconds. I'm not going to read all this out to you. You can read it on your own time. It makes it do more damage. Bang, 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 bang. Whew. Okay. Like I said, I'll clear things up at the overview at the end. We have one more to do. Unholy San'layn. There's going to be timestamps for all of these, so you don't have to listen to me blabber about things you don't care about. There's just not. You don't have to. There's no reason to do that. Okay, cool. San'layn. This entire thing also is focused around this Vampiric Strike, which I will pop up on the screen, which is giving you more sustain through haste, which is just adding more button presses to your rotation. And now that Unholy button presses are really good from coils and Vampiric Strike, and really that's the big two. You alternate those buttons kind of like you're a Frosty K-Smile. It also gives you survivability through healing, and that is just only buffed by everything in the tree. So as promised, I will go through it, but the idea effectively is bigger button presses, faster button presses, self-healing. It's so inherently unholy to do all of those things, where you just constantly just chip damage, heal, chip damage. You can't target me because I have self-healing and I have necrotic wound self-healing and AMS self-healing from osmosis, right? It's like, it's very unholy right now, which makes San'layn a hard to argue choice. But we get a lot of time to experiment with these things very, very soon. Okay. So, another D&D mod. Lots of D&D mods. Again, make Defile a very, very reasonable option. You have double D&D, so that's just going to make this accessible almost all the time. Gaining Vampiric Strike faster from Blood-Soaked Ground is really nice, because it's such a core identity of the hero talents is to get access to your main ability that you get all the time, and D&D reducing physical damage is nice because we're not going to have 65% armor in the new expansion. So having physical damage reduction is very key for DK, which tends to take a lot when you don't have 65% armor. Okay, finally, we got 2 choice notes here. We got a Leech Increase, which, while it's not extremely potent, when you combine this Leech with this leech and any leech enchants we have, and then Lichborn giving it doubling, and then also giving your teammates leech. That's a lot of consistent self-healing, which is, again, the name of San'layn, right? And San'layn is just consistent self-healing. So it's very possible that all of these things come together and have like a corrupted season BFA effect where, yeah, one of them, like DH, corrupted season, you know what I'm talking about if you played Battle for Azeroth. If you don't, then I'm just spewing nonsense, but just trust the words that I'm saying. They had so many different sources of self-healing that they became immortal, right? Well, this could be very similar to that. Big IBF wall also, of course, has tons of merit. So what you would do here is, are they a burst comp? Are they an entirely setup comp? Let's run Bloody Fortitude. Are they a sustain comp? Are they a rock comp? Let's run Vampiric Aura. That is a choice that I just laid out for you. The choice is right there, and you have every situation where you choose either one. So I feel like that's useful information. Cool. Okay, this is not a choice because you don't raise ally in Arena. So Vampiric Speed. It doesn't even really matter what it does, but what it does is make you faster. Hence the name Vampiric Speed. Okay. Now you just have core ability buffers, Essence of the Blood Queen buffers. Just gives you more Death Coil damage. We love Death Coil damage. I said that so, like, jaded. There's no reason for that. It's just really good. More Death Coil damage. Now you got a Blood Beast, which does damage, and that's just more sustain. And Unholy loves sustain, and San'layn loves sustain. I don't know if I'm saying that right. San'layn. If I've said it wrong every single time, then make a compilation of them and send them to my parents, so they can be more disappointed in me. When Vampiric strikes, damage an enemy, blah, 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 more sustained damage. This one actually is pretty crazy because it extends your diseases, which is really good with Even Fever, which decreases the duration of diseases. So now you get the extra damage from that, but also extend it so you don't have to reapply it as much, which costs a rune to do and a global to do, and your globals are all really impactful. And then after that whole experience ends, the Gift of the San'layn, now you just do a huge chunk of damage with the disease bursting, which is a cool flavor. It's actually really cool. You have got this entire disease build. Now you're amping up the diseases and your sustained damage and then getting a chunk. Right after your Gift of the San'layn ends, you press one more Scourge Strike and you just get a huge additional chunk of damage with that. All flavorful, all reasonable, all synergistic. So cool. Strength proc for Sudden Doom. You have Sudden Doom all the time, just makes Harbinger even more valuable. I'm a huge proponent of this because I love the Death Coil package, and I think Sudden Doom triggering more often, but also increasing your Death Coil damage is far too big for one talent point to ever pass. And now it just makes you have more access to Visceral Strength, which is even better. Insight Terror. Weird name for what this does. Does sound like it would be a CC effect, right? A fear. But in reality, you are just adding more sustained damage, this time through the source of increasing your shadow damage, and then increasing your vampiric strike damage by a ton, which is great because you're going to want to be pressing that as much as humanly possible. Finally, the last choice node of this entire video, a Blood Beast Burst or Vampiric Strike more often. Vampiric Strike more often seems like it would be really good. But it's only active during 35% health execute windows, which, if I know anything about PvP, you tend to get out of the 35% window very quick because healers use cooldowns on you. So generally, if something activates at a 35% health window, you want to kill them, not to trigger something more often. So Sanguine Scent, unfortunately, the rare miss of this tree, it just doesn't have any PvP focused value. If health pools are way less flip-floppy, slingshotty, roller coaster-y in or within Arena, we'll know immediately because it will be very abundantly clear how the tide of the game is much slower, the pacing. And then Sanguine Saint could have value. But again, keeping somebody below 35% health in an arena generally means you would just want to win the game, not proc something faster. And finally, the thing that we were talking about, the big buff that buffs all the other stuff. When Vampiric Blood or Dark Transformation is active, you gain Gift of the San'layn, which increases the effectiveness of your main core San'layn ability, and gives you Vampiric Strike the entire time, which is more damage, more haste stacking, more survivability. The good thing about this is Dark Transformation cooldown reduction is something I run in every build. I have to find it. It is somewhere, right? Where is it, boys? Where is the Dark Transformation cooldown reduction? It's 45 seconds perma, maybe? Is that just why it's 45 seconds perma? I don't remember. There is a Dark Transformation 45 second in every build now for Unholy. And it also is the reason Unholy Blight comes out. So you want to press this instantly whenever you see it all the time, which is just going to give you access to your main San'layn effect. It's a very short cooldown, very, very strong, and it's just so accessible, and it also gives you other things, which is really cool because Unholy has had a problem where it has too much ability bloat. You have to do this setup, this setup. Well, now you're baking San'layn into Dark Transformation and Unholy Blight into Dark Transformation. So now when you press this one button, it does 50 things, right? Wow. So that's actually really, really good. And that's San'layn. I mean, it is not, you have to, with Deathbringer and San'layn, you have to play these things to get a feel for them, because otherwise, with Rider, I was able to explain stuff, but with these two, it's like you need to see it. You need to be shown the stuff, because it's all buffing an ability you've never used before if you haven't played beta yet. But the idea is both of them tie into the core identity of the spec. San'layn into Unholy, sustain, survivability, rot, disease, POW, and then Frost, Deathbringer, 45 seconds. I mean, 45 seconds effectively is the definitive word of Frost in 2 words. In 3 words. In A War Within. 45 seconds. Okay. So, as promised, after all of that rambling, I will answer probably the only question. So I'll make a timestamp here that says the only thing you actually needed to watch about the video, if you want to be like that, of which I'm going to run starting War Within based on what I've seen so far. Of course, this is very subject to change. Of course, tuning can happen. And of course, we need to experiment in an arena against the best players, you know, to see how everything works. But for Frost, I will be playing Deathbringer for every 45-second go focus burst heavy build, which is the Strike Storm build. And for Frost, I will actually try Rider Endless Winter. So I'm going to have both of those builds set up. Both of them I'm going to play dual wield with because I'm such a huge proponent of everything it has to offer. And both of them I'm going to play in solo shuffle on stream every day come War Within. So please tune in to twitch.tv/Flarkness when the arena comes out, when the season starts, and watch me play both of those. That is an answer, because I talked about how there was a Rider Burst option. And I'm telling you, I'm not going to be running that because I think Deathbringer Burst is way too much better. So Deathbringer Burst, Endless Winter, Rider. That is what I'm going to try first. For Unholy, I think San'layn just wins. Being able to kind of prove immortality in that, not that you can't die to anything, but that you're a very bad swap target, which means people won't do it, so you get to do whatever you want, is a monster solo shuffle thing. It's just so valuable to be able to say, I can chase because they won't go me. I can use my cooldowns aggressively because they won't go me. I will constantly put pressure on anybody I want, including their healer, behind a pillar, because they won't go me. So if San'layn is really as tanky and self-healing as it looks, San'layn Unholy is a solo shuffle god. Obviously, tuning needs to be there, so Unholy has to be good in PvE for all this to matter, because it's effectively playing a PvE spec in Arena with the way that everything is designed. But yeah, San'layn Unholy. I will give a nod to Rider Unholy D&D package, dropping D&D defile on a team fight in a BG Blitz seems crazy. I will also give another nod to the fact that Unholy Rider synergizes as much just with the sustain orient as San'layn does. So, actually, this is a big nod. If Undeath and the numbers behind them are as high as they need to be to add an additional rock component, Rider Unholy makes exactly as much sense as San'layn. It just misses a little bit of survivability, but it also has proc AMS. So, there you go. Frost Deathbringer Burst. Endless Winter Frost has a chance with Rider. San'layn Unholy, survivability and damage, but Rider Unholy absolutely has its own version of a sustain package that if the numbers are there, Undeath just seems crazy for Unholy because of all the disease and rot focus. And yeah, that's as good of an answer as you're going to get. The expansion hasn't even started yet, man. If I told you anything specifically, I would be doing you a disservice. I mean, that's just crazy for anybody to tell you exactly what they're running. 3 weeks into the arena start. That's crazy. Come to my stream. I'll be testing all 3 of them out. All the different combinations out. I might even throw in some blood. I'm not going to do blood. I'm sorry. Okay, bye. That was a long video. Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.